If you were waiting for a 3080 Ti, Nvidia for now said no, 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 but they are going to give us 3 different types of fairly weird GPUs coming to the market. Let's talk about what these are, and you're going to be as surprised as I was. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Some say every time you smash that like button, it's a better chance that Nvidia may even bring back something like a 980 Ti or older GPU. Alright, so let's talk about what GPUs Nvidia is actually bringing back to the market. So we are all waiting for a possible 3080 Ti, but that's going to be on the very high end, and pretty much Nvidia has postponed that indefinitely in order to sort of focus on manufacturing for the existing GPUs like the 3070, 3080, 3090. So at least for now, for the high end, this is pretty much what we're stuck with, which in terms of performance, we're absolutely fine with. The biggest issue here is just having stock and availability. And of course, the ever ongoing problem of constantly increasing MSRP prices that do seem to be getting fairly high compared to the initial MSRP that these GPUs were supposed to be launched at. So let's talk about these 3 distinct and separate types of GPUs that Nvidia is introducing into the market, or in some cases bringing back. So the first one will be a GTX 1010. If that sounds weird and maybe underpowered, that's because it is. This is going to be really only for very basic 2D and 3D applications, maybe for something that you need like a display port out or something like that. This is not even something I would consider as like a budget or a very entry-level GPU for gaming. So I think Nvidia basically is just releasing this because it probably doesn't affect the manufacturing and availability of any newer, more powerful GPU, and it gives certain people that just need the absolute most basic graphics card just something that they can basically buy to get them through. And of course, Nvidia's not really making that big of a deal about this, and why would you? I mean, it's a 1010, it's using really old Pascal technology at this point, not even Turing, so it's definitely stuff that's been around for a long time, but this goes to prove how insane the demand is. They're trying to at least satisfy those people that want the most basic of GPUs, so that shows you that there's an absolute market for everything, and they're probably going pretty deep into their inventory, into their old stock and their old manufacturing processes, just to be able to find a way to get a little bit closer for closing the gap on some of that demand versus the supply issue. So this certainly is an interesting move, but it makes sense. Things are in such a state right now of no stock, no availability. I think that just goes to show you how dire the situation is, that they have to go that far back for a GPU that's really not even that good. But there are obviously enough people that will make use of it, so I guess they're going to be bringing it back. But that shows you how the stock and availability really is a main concern right now. I mean, theoretically, you can get a GPU if you really want. A lot of people have in terms of the newer GPUs, but you can't just walk into a store most likely, or even, go on Newegg or Amazon and readily find something in stock. You're going to have to catch something the moment it drops, like with stock notifications. Then, of course, you may have a better chance of getting it, but those are usually sold out very quickly within a few seconds, maybe up to a minute, depending on the GPU. So certainly not something guaranteed, and certainly that's going to be something for more of like the hardcore users that really want a GPU. Most normal users that just want a regular GPU for gaming, they're probably going to be out of luck. So that goes to show you that by bringing back these older GPUs, it really indicates that Nvidia really needs help on the manufacturing side just to be able to fulfill some of that demand. And of course, the GTX 1010, not really very significant at all. But the second move we're going to talk about, the second GPU that Nvidia actually is bringing back, that's going to be the 2060 and the 2060 Super from the Turing architecture. So nothing to do with Ampere. So you heard that right, 2060, 2060 Super. So these GPUs were seen last generation. So we're pretty much seeing them come back now on the market, which is really weird because Nvidia just announced the 3060, which is supposed to be coming out at the end of February. So that goes to show you that the demand is really intensifying, and the supply for the new Ampere GPUs really isn't anywhere close to being able to satisfy this demand. And in a way, it kind of makes sense for Nvidia to introduce the 2060, 2060 Super. After all, that seems to be the line of cards, that 60 sort of series that most gamers go to. If you look back historically, the 960, the 1060, and of course the 2060 itself are very popular GPUs for most gamers, especially the 2060 and 2060 Super. They were, at the time they were released, fairly affordable cards, but they still gave you pretty great performance at 1080p, even pretty competent in 1440p. So it makes sense that Nvidia's probably bringing them back. They're going to be easier to manufacture. They're not going to be as intense as Ampere is right now. So that way they may be able to fill in some of that void. A lot of people who are shooting for a 3060 or a 3060 Ti most likely are going to have to fall back on maybe a 2060 Super or a 2060, since there really is no other option out there for people that need a GPU at that range if they don't find one of those GPUs in stock. So this certainly also indicates that when the 3060 launches, gamers probably aren't going to see that many of those either. We did talk about previously it having 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which is a very attractive number for cryptocurrency miners. So that's certainly going to be a GPU that may be snapped up and masked by all the cryptocurrency mining community. Of course, the 3060 Ti is already a pretty popular GPU in that regard, so it may mean that that GPU is going to make it even harder for gamers to get their hands on this new generation that's launching. But here's where the situation gets a little bit dicey. Now, you would expect previous generation GPUs, when new ones are available, to logically go down in price, but that's really not going to be the case here. You're going to be seeing 2060s and 2060 Supers pretty much for close to the price that a 3060 or a 3060 Ti should be. I wouldn't be surprised if these 2060 Supers are pretty much right around $400 or a little bit more. That's basically the price of a 3060 Ti. So certainly in terms of MSRP, that's not going to be a very good value to price to performance proposition, because you are buying a generation old GPU for the same price as something new that's supposedly supposed to be out now. But of course, that's going to draw attention to the MSRP. As we know, MSRP prices pretty much have been non-existent for the most part. The third-party AIB GPUs are significantly more expensive than MSRP, and after the beginning of the new year, when the exemption on the tariffs expired, as well as with the cryptocurrency mining and a lot of GPU demand for gamers, prices across the board have gone up to like a very ridiculous level. I mean, we're talking about 3070s for almost $800, something like the MSI Supreme. We're talking about GPUs that were supposed to be $699, like the 3080. You can see 3080s going for basically close to $1,000 now, depending on the model. So certainly you may see MSRP with certain founder edition GPUs from Nvidia, but third-party and AIB partner cards are going to be very hard to come by at that price. And that's where we circle back to the 2060 and the 2060 Super. Even the Turing generation, if you look up like a 2080 or 2080 Ti, those prices have also risen. That way they can certainly take advantage of the demand for these GPUs. And since they're pretty old technology that's already, paid for itself a long time ago, they can certainly probably have a nicer profit margin on them as well, because they can still sell this older generation technology for basically almost the price of the new RTX 3000 series. So that's certainly pretty crazy to see a 2060 Super for almost $400 when the 3060 Ti was supposed to be $399. That's a fairly significant gap in generation. Of course, the performance of a 3060 Ti is going to be much better than something like a 2060 Super, so it's not like they're really close at all. And finally, the third type, a very interesting type of GPU that Nvidia is supposedly releasing now, that's going to be mining specific GPUs. In fact, we saw from MSI a possible mining specific 3060 Ti. This is going to be interesting for a few factors. At least you could say, all right, they're focusing mining specific GPUs towards a certain segment. Hopefully that would also free up GPUs for gamers. But of course, in theory, that makes sense. But in practice, of course, they still have to use GPUs to make those mining cards. They still have to use the same type of things that could turn into gamer GPUs. So that argument is a little bit lukewarm. I don't completely buy it. And of course, what are the main differences between like a cryptocurrency mining GPU and something that's regular? Well, if it's anything like a few generations ago when they did this, when cryptocurrency was at its, initial boom period, a lot of them may actually be what they call headless cards, meaning that you can't plug in a monitor to them, because of course a lot of these cryptocurrency miners are just putting a bunch like in a farm, so they don't have to individually plug a monitor to each card. So that's going to be one thing that makes it a little bit tricky. And let's say if cryptocurrency, drops again and the cryptocurrency miners want to get rid of their GPUs, well, now those GPUs are going to be pretty much useless to gamers because they don't have a plug for DisplayPort or HDMI. So that definitely doesn't make it the best sort of like value long-term proposition for somebody who's, a cryptocurrency miner. So that's certainly a caveat there. Those GPUs are not going to be really useful for miners later on. And I think maybe in a certain sense, since they don't really seem to make that much sense in general, they're not really going to make it better for gamers, because like I said, they still have to produce those GPUs for miners. I think this is more of like a marketing, or maybe even just for the optics of it, because then they could at least say, oh, hey, listen, listen, we have mining specific GPUs. We are selling these by the boatload to cryptocurrency miners. So gamers, don't get mad at us. We're selling you the gamer GPUs and the miners get their own specific GPUs. So I think in terms of the optics and in terms of the marketing, it may make sense for them to do that. But at the end of the day, I'm not really too sure what impact this is going to have on the stock and availability of GPUs specifically for gamers. Now, this is something that certainly has been done before. I remember during the first cryptocurrency mining boom, even Micro Center sometimes had some of these specific cards. They have specific motherboards that are for cryptocurrency mining that have more like PCIe slots and things like that. I remember power supplies were also in very low availability. So this is... And I remember power supplies at that point were also very low in availability. So in summary, with the introduction of these three different types of GPUs, you know, the very base 1010, that's trying to cover a market for people who need a very basic GPU, up to the 2060 and the 2060 Super, that's covering the market sort of for that entry-level budget gamer that just needs a GPU in their system that's going to perform actually fairly decently at 1080p. And then of course, they have the cryptocurrency mining specific GPUs in order to try to satiate some of that demand. I think it makes sense that they went for these three different market segments because, as we know, it seems like most of the GPUs released and that people have been focusing on are already the high-end GPUs. I mean, we started with a 3080, a 3090, then a 3070. Even on the AMD side, we have a 6800, 6800 XT. These are all pretty much top-tier high-end GPUs, so it makes sense that some of the lower-end market, like the 2060, the people that are going to go for those, or even the very basic 1010 market, it makes sense that Nvidia is at least trying to spread itself out a little bit more to take care of some of those customers. And then hopefully in the meantime, the manufacturing and the stock availability of sort of the high-end GPUs like the 3070, 3080, hopefully that will improve somewhat within the next few months. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe if you like content like this, and I'll see you guys on the next video.